Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Scottish Open Initial Research Show. I hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July weekend. Grilled out, enjoyed all of the brats and dogs that you could handle, some fireworks, and of course, had a lot of success at the John Deere Classic, where yours truly cashed 76% of the lineups that I played. It was a fantastic week. It would have been even better had I was able to get one of my outrights across the finish line. I didn't have Brian Campbell in an outright bet, but he was my mad scientist play for last week, so I hope you followed in that recommendation of throwing some Brian Campbell into your lineups. Of course, I played all the Denny McCarthy, who played well, Michael Thorbjornsen, who played well, again, Kevin Roy, Cam Champ. I mean, it was just a fantastic week. I got very, very little incorrect. I did get some things wrong. Don't let me sit here and tell you I got everything right, because I didn't. But I can't stress it enough that I had a huge week. I hope you all shared in that success. And it comes at a great time as we build momentum to 4 straight double tournament weeks. That's right. First off this week, we've got the Scottish Open and the ISCO. And then next week, of course, the Open Championship and the Barracuda. So we are starting to hit our stride here at Calls just in time for some very, very big tournaments. I'm quite excited. Let's start by looking at the main tournament for this week over in Scotland, the Scottish Open. As usual, this night and every night, all statistics provided tonight are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research regarding some course information regarding the tournament of the week. With there being 2 tournaments this week, I don't know what exactly I'm going to do yet, and we don't have a whole lot of information in Fantasy National regarding the Scottish Open. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. If you follow me over on social media, you would have seen all of the Denny McCarthy I was playing, all of the Cam Champ I was playing, all of the Kevin Roy I was playing. You'd also seen all the Sammy Valimaki that I was playing, who missed the cut. But you would have seen all that. You would have seen my betting card with Cam Champ and Denny McCarthy. All of these others that were in contention for the John Deere, which led to me having a big week for the John Deere. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a fantastical article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. And if by subscribing to his article, you're going to be able to get his deluxe version, which comes out every Wednesday. Gives you his top values, his best plays, and projected ownerships. So make sure you're subscribed to that article and following him over on social media. I do believe the 2025 Picks Challenge will be back this week, since he was gone last week on vacation. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. How was your John Deere? Of course, if you had a lot of success, please put it into chat or in the comments. I would be more than happy to shout out members of the community who have success. How was your John Deere? How was your 4th of July weekend in general? And then moving forward, what do you know of the Scottish Open, of the Renaissance Club? Who are you targeting to start? How good of a warm-up do you think this is for the Open Championship? And as a reminder, I am going to have a full slate of shows this week. So if you want to start talking a little bit of ISCO, I'll always be up for that as well. But I'll get into that at the end of the show as an update on my schedule. But tonight we're focused on the Scottish Open and the initial research. So let's do our initial research for the 2025 Scottish Open. We are going to start normally we start over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. I bring this up to show you that the GCSAA does not have a fact sheet for the Renaissance Club and the Scottish Open. Tuesday night, little foreshadowing here, Tuesday night we'll cover the ISCO. So nothing to go on with this page, and they haven't had a tournament fact sheet, since the strategic alliance between the DP World Tour and PGA Tour. So no historical fact sheet to look in either. So instead, we are going to go straight to Fantasy National. Take a look at the players in the field for the Scottish Open. There have been a few field changes already. Brandt Snedeker was given a sponsor's exemption, so he is going to be playing. Any of these players from Mark Hubbard down are alternates at the moment. So that's why I have them starred. And then Daniel Gavins, a DP World Tour member, originally committed to playing. He has since withdrawn. So Daniel Gavins is not playing this week over in Scotland. But anyway, this is a pretty good talking point or time to mention that I only collect statistics for the PGA Tour. So all of these players that have been on the DP World Tour, and they're pretty well known. Some of them will be pretty well known. Daniel Brown, Aaron Cockerell, Alejandro Del Rey, Alex Fitzpatrick, Simon Forsstrom, I believe is how it's pronounced. All these DP World Tour players, great in their own sense. I don't collect their stats. I don't collect DP World Tour stats. So if you're looking or wanting statistics or a deep dive into DP World Tour players, I'm not going to have that for you. And I'm just going to put that out there at the forefront the beginning of this week. That way it saves you all some time if you all want to get into that. I am going to be focused solely on the PGA Tour players, since that's what I am using with Fantasy National. Just being transparent with you as the viewer. But in terms of PGA Tour players, over in Scotland at the Renaissance Club this week, the who's who of the PGA Tour, Scotty and Rory, Sam Burns, Harry Hall has actually played very, very well lately. Englishman, Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors. I mean, just the biggest names on the PGA Tour, minus a couple of exceptions, are here at the Renaissance Club. And with that, since we didn't have a GCSA tournament fact sheet, what I can tell you about the Renaissance Club as we move to the course breakdown is that it is a Tom Doak design or redesign, if you will. It is not a traditional links course in the purest sense. It is something what they call heathlands. There's a few trees around the Renaissance Club. It's not a pure traditional links course in the truest sense. It is what they call a heathlands design, but by American standards, it's pretty linksy. There's only a couple of holes with water in play. Not a whole lot of elevation changes throughout the course. Not a whole lot. There's a few. But if we get into the actual scorecard and graphical sense of the Renaissance Club, what we're going to see is that this is a par 70, but it's not a traditional par 70. There are 3 par 5s, one of them being 600 yards, 594 and 576. So some fairly long par 5s here at the Renaissance Club. So there's 3 par 5s and 5 par 3s. So that's what's comprising the par 70 that is going to be seen on the scorecard. Now, what is not reflected here is that a couple of these holes have been lengthened about 20 or 30 yards. And Gabe has a very good write-up in his article that comes out every Sunday called The Fringe. So, again, I'm going to plug that article. If you are not subscribed to it, make sure you are. He goes into quite a bit more detail in terms of the changes to the course since last year. But we have these 3 par 5s that are fairly gettable. but not really attackable in 2. Now, the par 5 third can be in the best of conditions. You see a 2% eagle rate, but the other par 5s, 1.5%. The conditions have to be very favorable for you to get home in 2 on those par 5s. And then the par 3s, the 5 par 3s around the Renaissance Club are of varying lengths. We've got 147, 218, 204, 161, and 203. So good mix here of short and long par 3s. Some play right at par. Some are pretty difficult, like the par 3 ninth. Plays to 2/10 of a shot over par. The hardest hole on the course, the par 4 18th, plays to more than a third of a shot over par. So there are some very, very challenging holes around the Renaissance Club. It is not easy in the traditional sense of Open Championship style golf. Having said that, if the wind is not a factor, as you can see, last year was mostly calm, it can play pretty easy for particularly the upper echelon of the PGA Tour, the upper echelon of the DP World Tour. You see these 4 rounds of difficult in 2022. It was cold, it was rainy, it was windy, it was your traditional, what you would think, traditional open style, Open Championship style golf, and that's why the scores were quite suppressed in 2022. In fact, I'll go ahead and bring up the leaderboard. Xander won that year at 7 under. Very, very difficult. The other 2 years have not played to that. We had Rory at 15 under 2 years ago, and then last year Bobby Mack wins at 18 under. So there are scores to be had around the Renaissance Club for sure. There's a few very short par 4s, including one drivable par 4, the par 4 fifth. Plays to 338. Definitely drivable. You see eagle almost at a 1% rate. So decent chance at a birdie here. But there's a few shorter par 4s. 338, the drivable. 418 is short. But most of them, and the reason why the Renaissance Club is considered fairly long, especially by Open Championship standards, even though this isn't an Open Championship style courses, lots of long, difficult par 4s. You see a par 4 second plays to a quarter of a shot over par, 493. We have 505, 464, 483, 488. Lots of long, difficult par 4s here at the Renaissance Club. Do note that, and I exited out of it by mistake. Do note that we don't have a lot of data for the 2023 Scottish Open for whatever reason. We don't have the strokes gained. We don't have the proximity. So some of these numbers won't be, exact. We don't have the fairways and greens. We just have, how they performed on the various par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s from 2023. Now, 2022 and last year, we do. So we're essentially going on 2 years of data here, is what I'm getting at. But for your strokes gained by shot type, you see putting has really ruled here at the Renaissance Club for your top 10s. Putting is going to be a pretty big deal, especially for Americans that are not used to these extremely slow greens that are prevalent in Open Championship style golf. They have to keep the greens very, very slow just due to the amount of wind that can really happen. You see this a lot on the or in the Caribbean, on these Caribbean style courses that winds are very prevalent. They keep those greens slow. That way you can maintain play. Lots of putting here for players in the top 10 For your top fives, you see the approach really start to distance itself from the other, like off the tee and around the green. But around the green is higher than off the tee. And then for your winners, so clearly we're not going to be ignoring the approach. Around the green has been basically a non-factor for our winners because they've been hitting their irons so well. These greens are pretty large, as you would expect from British and Scottish, Irish style courses. So there's a look at your strokes gained by shot type. It'll be interesting to see, particularly tomorrow into the data dive, how the 2 years of strokes gained data look, off the tee, approach, and whatnot. But just for tonight, we're going to be looking at some putting, going to be looking at some approach play. I'll talk about around the green here in a minute because it's a little bit confusing, I guess is the best way to put it. Looking at strokes gained by hole by par, as you would expect, professionals are taking advantage of the par fives. That's where the majority of their strokes gained are coming. I'm a little surprised that the par threes aren't contributing a lot more since there's 5 of them here. But you can see, at least for the top 10s and the top 5s, they've been lagging quite a bit in terms of importance. And then for your winners, again, par threes just kind of lagging behind. So looking at a lot of par 5 performance and especially some long par 4 performance. We'll set this back to our top 10s. And then looking at hole composition, as I was mentioning with the par 3s, here at the Renaissance Club, one very short par 3 at 147 on the scorecard, one mid-length par 3, and 3 long par 3s in the 2 teens, or actually, the 2 O's, 203, 204, and 218 are the 3 par 3s in this 200 to 225 range. So you can see that the 203 and the 204 easily can come down under 200 if they move tees and pins around. That's another thing Gabe mentioned in his article, that there are a lot of tee boxes at the Renaissance Club. Gives the tournament organizers a lot of options in how they're going to set up the course depending on the weather for that day. We have one drivable par 4 at 338 or 334. Again, I'm going to have to do 338, par 4 fifth. A couple of shorter par 3s in between 400 and 450. Majority of our par 4s here at the Renaissance Club, 450 to 505 of our 10. Half of the par 4s fall between 450 and 500. We do have one very long par 4, and it's very difficult at 505. The par 5s, sandwiching 600 yards, 2 below 600, 1 right at 600. So majority of the time, we'll probably be looking at 550 to 600 par 5s. Again, I brought up these past leaderboards to show, how we didn't have any strokes gained data, any proximity data, especially when you have no data like this. It's going to throw off some of the graphs. So I would not get too carried away with seeing this 26% in the 0 to 75. Having said that, these par 5s are not reachable in 2 most of the time. You have to have very, very good course conditions. So there are going to be an increase of shorter wedges into greens than we typically see because the par 5s aren't getting attacked in 2. But as you can see, majority of your approach shots are from 200 plus due to, again, if those players do decide to attack the green par 5s in 2, it's not very often, but they can with a good drive. But so many par 4s that are long leads to a lot of 200 plus approaches, 175 to 200 approaches. These fairways here are pretty unique in the sense that some are very, very thin and some are pretty wide and forgiving. So quite a bit of differentiation among holes at the Renaissance Club. Historic cut line for the 3 years that we have data, +4 in 2022. Again, that was when it was very cold, very windy, rainy. It was just miserable and open championship style golf. It was very difficult that year. You see, in the 2 years that we've had pretty benign conditions, the cut line has actually been under par, -1 and -2. Few birdies around, 16% bogeys, so more scores under par than over par, which you can see here from the cut line. Generally, at least the past 2 years, has lended itself to being on the easier end. And we'll take a look at the forecast starting tomorrow. Driving accuracy, not high here. And players are taking driver more often than not. So I don't think the rough is that big of an issue. Despite what you think of open championship style golf, it does not seem like the Renaissance Club really punishes being in the rough. The biggest deterrent or the biggest factor in scoring is if you can avoid the numerous pot bunkers that are around Renaissance Club and open championship style golf. If you're in the fairway pot bunker, that is a true penalty stroke, basically, to get out. So accuracy, not that high. Players are generally playing away from where the majority of those pot bunkers are, and they're just taking drivers, you can see here. Green and regulation percentage, despite their size being quite a bit larger than the average PGA Tour size green, they're only getting hit at about an average rate. These greens can be somewhat difficult to hit. They are protected by steep runoffs and false fronts. The ground game, think traditional Shane Lowry at Port Rushmore will be next week. That style tends to play well here at the Renaissance Club. Green and regulation percentage right about average, and scrambling is difficult around the Renaissance Club. Chipping and such from around the green is not a given. 3 putts per round, despite the size of these greens, 3 putts a little bit less prevalent than the average tour event. We talked about driving distance, and because of the size of these greens, proximity is quite a bit larger, or quite a bit further away than the average tour event. I mentioned how I was going to talk about some around the green stuff. It's interesting to note that scrambling is a little bit more difficult here. Yet, like the three putts aren't necessarily that high. Greens aren't, exactly difficult. I don't know how I'm going to approach this or attack around the green this week. What do you think? Put it in chat or put it in the comments what you think about around the green play at the Renaissance Club or open championship style golf in general. What I do know is that we're going to be looking at quite a bit of like 3-putt avoidance, lag putting. That's always a skill that is necessary in links style golf. But as far as, like around the green, sand saves, things of that nature, I'm just not seeing. I don't know how I want to factor that into my calculations this week. Fortunately, we don't have to make that decision tonight. It is only Sunday, and the tournament will start, very early on a Thursday morning here in the States, or maybe even late Wednesday night, depending on where you are in the country. So we have some time to think about it, but I'm not 100% sold on how I'm going to want to factor in around the green if I do. We're definitely going to be looking at some putting, definitely going to look at some approach, particularly from Rory and Bobby Mack and Xander. They were clearly hitting their irons well that week. I'm interested in seeing that the around the green isn't much of a factor for our winners. We don't have any strokes gained from the 2023. So if we look at like Bobby Mack last year, like he was very good with the irons, kind of middling or a little bit above field average in the around the green. And if we look at 2022 and Xander, oh, okay, so there you go. We don't have any. So really, all of the strokes gained here is from just last year. So last year's top 10, last year's top 5, and last year's winner, Bobby Mack. This is how he performed. It's not ideal. It's not ideal considering we only have 1 year of data, but we'll do the best that we can moving forward tonight and this week. With that, we'll come back to Fantasy National, and we'll just take a kind of a quick look at some of these metrics that that we want to look at. I'm not going to do anything with easy or difficult tonight until we look at the forecast starting tomorrow. What I will say is that the earliest of early forecasts from Windfinder suggest that it won't be very difficult this week. It looks like the winds are going to be pretty calm, but I'm going to wait until tomorrow to, maybe have that forecast solidify a little bit or whatnot. So instead, we're just going to take a look at some basic strokes gained type metrics. So long as it's been 2025, your top off the tee players from basically the PGA Tour playing at the Renaissance Club this week: Scotty Scheffler, Ludwig, Nicholas Norgard, Aldrich Potgieter. Although he did withdraw from the John Deere, so that is something to keep an eye on as the week keeps going. Jesper Svensson, Rory, Kevin Yu, Corey Connors, Colin Morikawa, and Isaiah Salinda are your top 10 in terms of off the tee from the PGA Tour players playing at the Renaissance Club. Definitely not going to ignore the irons. So your top iron players the last 36 rounds, so long as it's been in 2025, Scotty, Victor, Sepp Straka, Henrik Norlander, Colin Morikawa, Bud Cauley, Daniel Berger, Victor Perry, Corey Connors, and Sammy Valimaki. Now, do note that the John Deere is not in here yet. Obviously, Sammy Valimaki missing the cut will probably hurt his approach numbers, would be my guess. Norlander making the cut probably helps him, all that stuff. Don't want to do a whole lot in around the green, but your top around the green players: Sungjae, Matt Wallace, Tommy, Mateo Montecero, Andrew Putnam, Alejandro Tosti, Sam Stevens, Davis Riley, Ryan Gerard, and Scotty Scheffler. And the only filter that I'm going to use, and it's not going to be a great filter, but what we do know is that these greens are slow. They are very, very, very slow greens. They have to be kept that way in case the winds pick up. Now, normally I don't like going back too far. Having said that, because of the relative lack of data, I mean, some of these guys do have 36 rounds. If I go all rounds, let's see what we have here in terms of rounds. So Harman's got several, but most of these players aren't above 30. Most of them not even into the 20s. Because of this, let's go ahead and still limit it. I guess I'm going to limit it to maybe the beginning of 2022. I think would be a decent start in terms of the amount of rounds here. Novak's got 42. Again, several players with 0. These are all mostly the DP World Tour players. Your top putters on Velcro or slow greens. And Fantasy National is listing these as Cocoa Beach, the host of the Puerto Rico Open, another Caribbean-style course. Corrales, Caribbean. El Camaleon, the former host of the Mayakoba and Worldwide Technologies, El Cardinal, the current host of the Worldwide Technologies, Grand Reserve, which is again another name for Cocoa Beach. Pebble had apparently some slow greens at one point. The Plantation course is notorious for having slow greens. TPC San Antonio, TPC Summerlin, and Vedanta. So you can see the overwhelming majority or theme here are these Caribbean-style courses. Cocoa Beach, Corrales, El Camaleon, El Cardinal. I mean, even though it's not Caribbean, Plantation course is, these coastal I was going to use Caribbean, but these coastal courses where wind is a big factor. It's a little surprising to see San Antonio and Summerlin, but it is what it is. Vedanta, another Caribbean event. So anyway, your top putters on slow greens going back to 2022. Denny McCarthy, Taylor Pendrith, Sungjae, Nico Echeverria, Adam Scott, Andrew Putnam, Justin Rose, Jacob Bridgman, Thomas Dietrich, and Taylor Moore. Adam Shank and Emiliano Grillo would be in your top 10 or close to it, but they are alternates as of now. That's why they are starred. Okay, I'm going to remove those filters, and let's take a look at just do some par 4 scoring here, probably the 450 to 500, just to get a decent feel here. Your top performers in 2025 from the PGA Tour at par 4s, 450 to 500 yards. Scotty, Nick Taylor, Sam Burns, Corey Connors, Alex Smalley, Ludwig, Justin Thomas, Denny McCarthy, Michael Kim, and JJ Spawn are your top 10. Justin Lauer would be 10th if he gets into the field. I think that's all I kind of want to do in terms of looking at statistics tonight. I usually save majority of that for the data dive tomorrow. But let's go ahead and take a look, because we've looked at the historic conditions. I talked about them a little bit. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tournament history or strokes gained total page view. Performance at the Renaissance Club. And again, the Renaissance Club has hosted the Scottish Open since 2019, or maybe it was 2018, around there. But I'm only looking back at back to 2022 because of the DP World Tour and PGA Tour Strategic Alliance. That's when the current format of the tournament started, was 2022. So in those 3 years, your top performer has been Bobby Mack, who is the defending champion, finished runner-up the year before that, did miss the cut in 2022. Your most consistent performer, though, has been Tom Kim. Top 15, top 10, and a top 5. He's been very good here. Rory, win in 2023 and a top 5 last year. So he's been stellar in 2 tries. And these 3 are really kind of the extreme best of the best, as you can see in terms of strokes gained total. There's a significant drop in terms of total when you go from Rory to Romain Langosque. And if I'm butchering that name, I apologize. I'm not French. He's a Frenchman. But he finished 3rd here last year, also has a top 25. He's played well. Some other notables, at least from the PGA Tour, or that followers of the PGA Tour would know. Wyndham Clark has played very, very well here. Top 10, top 20, top 25. Pretty darn consistent. Tommy has been very good. 4th, 6th, and then pretty kind of middling last year, but very, very good in the first 2 years. Adam Scott, runner-up last year. Corey Connors has been good. Thorbjorn Olesen has been solid, if not spectacular, just kind of solid. Victor Paris, Højgaard. Your winner in 2022 in the most difficult of circumstances was Xander. Did top 15 last year and also has a T42. Some other notables here. Scotty Scheffler didn't play last year, but did finish top 3 or tied for 3rd in 2023. Morikawa, very extreme, 1 for 2, top 5 in a missed cut. Some other names here. Thomas Dietrich, Ryan Fox has been pretty solid, or at least fairly solid. So there's a look at a few of the names that have played well in the first 3 years, or in the past 3 years of the Scottish Open. Players who haven't played well, Daniel Gavins, who has already withdrawn. Andrew Novak did make the cut last year, but finished fairly poorly and then missed the cut in the first one. Dylan Fratelli, Francesco Molinari, Kevin Yu 0 for 2, Padraig Harrington 1 for 3, Guido, somebody I backed a lot at the U.S. Open, and he did not play very well at all. 2 for 3, but very, very poor in terms of, total finish. Otegwe, 1 for 3. Luke Donald, 0 for 3. Matthew Pavone, 1 for 3. Matthew Jordan, 3 for 3, but lacking a lot in terms of finish. Yeah. So there's a look at some of the players who have and have not played well around the Renaissance Club. Really, that's kind of all I have for you all in terms of an initial research with no GCSA tournament fact sheet. Not a whole lot of data to go over, considering 2023, we don't have any strokes gained. 2022, we don't have any strokes gained. So, still somewhat a fairly new tournament for stat heads like me. And then if you hear the celebration still going on in the background, my apologies. It seems like at least people in my neighborhood are still celebrating. But that's going to be it for an initial research show. I want to thank you all for the support, for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. The John Deere was a fantastic week for yours truly. Like I said, I cashed 76% of my lineups. That does not happen very often for me, so I am very proud of that performance this past week at the John Deere. I recommended Brian Campbell pretty heavily, being my mad scientist play. So hopefully you shared in that success. If you did, please put it in the comments. I'd be more than happy to shout out members of the community who have success, or reach out to me on social media. And reminder, as a kind of a scheduling thing for this week, Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday is the traditional research, data dive, and DFS for the Scottish Open. But we also have an alternate field event essentially in my backyard, in my neck of the woods, at Hurstbourne Country Club in Louisville, Kentucky, the ISCO Championship. So Tuesday night, I will be live with everything ISCO Championship, research, data, and DFS, all crammed into one night for the ISCO. So make sure you set your reminders for that. But thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers you made this past week for the John Deere Classic, for all the DFS contests you played this past week for the John Deere Classic. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive Show, may all your bets be profitable.